including winning a division championship with Vlora FC in 2019. He's also the founder of I Got Skills Academy. And his son Jakob currently plays professionally for Syracuse, Pulse AC, and NISA. It's Jason Popkin. Jason, how are you?
Doing really good. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, glad to have you here. Thank you so much for taking some time to join me today. We'll get into your endless coaching accolades and experience in just a minute, but I want to start by taking it back to your time as a soccer player. Can you tell us about how you were maybe introduced to the game and quickly summarize your playing career?
So my playing career actually didn't start till I was 30 years old.
Wow.
So I actually ended up getting involved because of my kids. Just started with being involved with them as they're coaching them, and then I just ended up finding my passion and continued to both play and coach.
So what was that like for you entering at such an adult age? What was it about soccer that attracted you? Was it just specifically your kids' interest in it, or was there maybe something different that really kind of directed you and attracted you to soccer specifically?
Yeah, so like I grew up, I graduated from Apple Valley, and so a lot of names around the Twin Cities, people also went there. It was just the environment that was there. Even though I didn't participate in the soccer, when I walked by, I would see them practicing, and I just always had a fascination. And then when I had my kids, and I'm 5'4", I don't think they're going to be playing football, basketball, baseball, and that's what's beautiful about soccer is no matter what size you are, body type, you can find your place in the sport. And that's kind of what led us there. And then just the game's beautiful, man. Like from the technical nuances and have the knowledge of the game, and just it gets deep. So I love it.
You don't see somebody getting introduced to the game in their 30s and accumulating all the licenses and accolades and coaching, experience that you've gotten since that time. So how difficult was it for you to sort of really dive into and gather everything you needed to, ascend to where you are right now from a coaching perspective? Did it come naturally to you? Sort of, what was that process like, I guess, of catching up, so to speak?
There's definitely a lot of catch up, a lot of second guessing myself and where I was at, especially in the early years. So like, because I was a new coach, at first I was like, oh, I don't know if I could take a U12 team. I don't know what that would be like, or I don't, like each age up, I wasn't sure how I'd handle it. I guess being a parent as well, as my son kept staging up, it also made it easier for me. Because I felt more comfortable with the game. I'm like, because I was seeing what was going on at each level.
That's an amazing story in and of itself. So obviously you mentioned that your kids were sort of the reason why you got into the game and obviously got into coaching. And that sort of transitioned to you really sort of making an impact. In 2008, you started a street soccer program in Hawaii you were involved in starting a street soccer program in Hawaii called Monday in the Lot.
Correct.
What was your inspiration from, for that specifically, and why Hawaii of all places?
So, yeah, well, I grew up here, born and raised. My wife was born and raised in Hawaii. At that time, my kids were like 4 or 5 years old. We decided to move back to Hawaii, get in touch with family. That's where we discovered soccer. And really there was one day where I had a long conversation with a guy that was running a company called Kaye, which it means street, and it was a street soccer company. And it was just about the culture and what was missing in America was really the soccer culture. Like when you think about, Brazil, you think about wherever you go, you're going to see a ball. You go to the beach, you're going to see a ball. You go to the park, you're going to see a ball. And that's something that we really miss here in America. And it was something that I realized. And I'm like, if I, at that time, my son was young, but he was already on his path. Like he's known since he was 6 where he wanted to go. And so with that in mind, I was like, if he really is going to grow up and play at the next level, he's got to grow up in a soccer culture. And it wasn't there. So I was like, well, what do we do? And I just created it. And that was back in the days of MySpace. So I just created this event called Monday in the Lot, by Hawaii Street Soccer. That was the MySpace name. And I just started going out and basically spamming every soccer player in Hawaii and trying to get them to come out. And the first night there was two guys that came out. Not the best night, but
Yeah.
over time it continued to grow, and it just became something beautiful. Like the small game, futsal, street soccer. There's so much. It's beautiful. The one, because there's so many one versus ones. You have to be technically proficient to play that game. You can't just kick the ball long or just run fast because the space is too small.
How long did it take you to, I guess, to go from that to, starting to develop something similar here in Minnesota? Because obviously Hawaii and Minnesota, two completely different places as far as limitations and aspects. Obviously you can do this year round in Hawaii, where you really can't do that year round in Minnesota unless you find some indoor space. So how did it sort of transition from Hawaii to now, okay, I want to take and sort of bring this similar program, this similar thing back home to Minnesota?
It's been a very, very slow and hard process. I don't believe we adapt very well here to new things. So small things, like, to me, futsal, it's an actual sport. It's a sport within itself. It's five-a-side game, right? But that term is thrown around very loosely here to mean anything indoor. Well, there's a very big difference between 7 versus 7 and 5 versus 5. So some of those things, the idea of free play, like now at our facility, we have pickup every single night, and we're getting guys coming out every single night. So it's starting, but the process has been very, very slow. But I've also been in a different position too. I had a lot more free time at that moment than I did here, because when I came here, I was already actively coaching, which means I can't go do pickup or those types of things as well.
Definitely. So 2011, you start the I Got Skills Academy. How did you get from Monday in the Park to launching I Got Skills? Tell me a little bit about developing I Got Skills specifically, and sort of what your inspiration was for that, and just the process of getting that off the ground.
Yeah, so from the very beginning, I mean, I guess I've always had visions of, having our own facility and like very, very grand dreams, but I didn't really know how we were going to get there. And it's been an evolution too. So when we just started Monday in the Light, we just started it as a pickup game because I was 30 years old. I wanted to play. I didn't know where to play. There just wasn't any outlets. So I created it and creating that around it. From that, when people found out, oh, he's doing this thing, there happened to be an event called the Dragon Boat Festival, and they'd asked, hey, would you be interested in doing a tournament alongside this festival? I said, that sounds amazing. I mean, we're going to have a soccer tournament, and there's going to be music, and there's going to be, this whole festival and all these other people. It's going to, like, expose the sport. I'm really, really, really happy that, as I just found out, we're going to actually be able to bring a similar event here in Minnesota this year as part of the Burnsville Festival. So again, it's both creating a fun environment for the players, adding the music, adding all that kind of stuff, but also for outside people to see how beautiful the sport is. So there was that, and then as that grew, then the tournaments, and then because it seemed like there was a demand for the tournaments, we started a league, and then after the league, then we started camps. And then we decided to move to California for Jakob. So we closed everything except for the camps in Hawaii and started to move on.
It's now been over a decade since I Got Skills was started in 2011. And obviously the program has evolved over time. You've already mentioned this and touched on it. One of the aspects you've implemented in your training is futsal. And this is a topic since starting this podcast almost 2 years ago now, I'm, learning and still a student of futsal. I've had the team from Futsal Society on, Caleb. I've had Mario from TC Soul Futsal on, and those have been really great conversations about not only the growth of futsal standalone in this country, but also the role futsal plays in soccer development specifically. Was futsal sort of always something you knew you wanted to include in your training program? And how did futsal specifically enter your program, and how have you seen that evolution over time in terms of development and its standing as a sport?
So, yeah, I mean, so really the first tournaments that we did, they were futsal tournaments. We didn't have, so here we have a lot of gyms, right? But we don't have, especially during the winter, we don't have a lot of outdoor space. There, getting gyms is hard and it's expensive, but there's a lot of outdoor space. So we basically just did futsal, five-a-side, 20 yards by 30-yard fields with futsal goals on grass. So from the very beginning, like almost from the very beginning, that's what we've been doing. And shout out to Caleb and Mario, doing really good things as well. The five-a-side game to me is incredibly important. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the statistics. Oh, you touch the ball 600 times more, and all those types of things. But one of the things I learned from a gentleman a long time ago is he was talking about how it teaches all aspects of the game. And the first thing people think about is the technical side. Sure, it does. You're on the ball. You can't lose control of it. It's a small space. You have to have control. But then also speed of play. Like, because if you watch the game at the highest level, they're playing extremely fast, one-touch passes, really, really moving. But also it's transitions. The offense to defense, defense to offense, in five-a-side or less. So if you and I go 1v1, right? If I stop defending, you win every time, right? I mean, it's what it's going to be. Same thing in 2 versus 2 if one person stops, all the way up to 5 versus 5. Now, when you add a 6th player, one person can be lazy. One person can be a lazy forward. So I don't want to talk bad about lazy forwards. It just, for me, it's that constant involvement in the game and that they're always involved. So I think it really teaches it. And the other aspect is, needing the small spaces in public. Because if you and I go to a soccer field and we don't know each other, right? Chances are I'm going to go to one side of the field. I'm going to be shooting on the goal by myself. You're going to be doing the same thing on the other side. Now, for me to have enough confidence to walk over to you and say, hey, you want to play a game? It takes quite a bit to walk 100 yards to go say something to somebody you don't know. It's a long ways, right? And then even if we decide, we're going to play, what do we play with? A 24-foot goal? Like, right? So I mean, it goes back to the same idea of street basketball. If you have a smaller space, if we're in a now you're only 50 feet away from me, and we have smaller goals, it's much more likely that you and I are going to start a game. And so it just makes it a lot easier culturally for people to play and meet each other, right?
Yep, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And I mean, the more I'm learning about futsal, the more I see its benefits. And, not only, introducing people to the game, I think is an underrated aspect of it too. Because as you mentioned, it's easier to get people together, but it's more fast paced. There's more scoring. As American sports fans and people who are interested in sports, we like more scoring, right? And more fast paced and more action.
Absolutely.
And more things to follow and keep our attention. So I think that's definitely a huge benefit of futsal as well. So I'm really excited to sort of continue to follow, futsal's growth here, not only in America, but obviously the great work that you're doing and everybody in the community is doing here in the Twin Cities soccer and futsal community.
It's an exciting game. And really, like, I haven't had as many people as I've introduced to the game. There's very few that are like, oh, I don't know about that futsal. Like, once they're introduced to it, they absolutely love it because all the things you're talking about, the excitement, like it's really fast paced and there's a lot of goals. So like, that the fast pace of basketball and what people love about basketball, it's brought into soccer, because traditionally, there's not a lot of goals. There's not that flair. Well, you get all of that in futsal. So it's a super entertaining sport to watch and play.
Definitely. Moving on here, obviously one of the more prominent players to come through your program, and obviously your training, as you mentioned, and now also serves as a coach for I Got Skills when he can, is your son Jakob. And he's come through local development. Obviously, is very, very featured and got some accolades really in high school and college as well. Stood out in the NPSL last season, and now, as we mentioned, he is playing professionally for Syracuse Pulse AC in NISA in the 3rd division. What's his journey been like from a training and development perspective?
Long and hard. And hard. It's been a journey. It's been, from Hawaii to here, and just talking to to him and like one of our other coaches who also recently went professionally is sometimes it's just hard. You're in that mindset and you know where you want to go, and the people around you aren't necessarily on that same path, and so sometimes just socially it can be hard. For him, he's always been a small player. He's a late bloomer. They've talked about biobanding, and there's a lot of confusion on what biobanding is, but I mean, we talk about it in education, and we understand that every child grows at a different rate. Well, that's both mentally and physically. He's a physical late bloomer, so physically he was always 2 years behind, and he's got a small frame, and so he would have 3 strikes against him before he ever stepped on the field. And what I've continually told him, I said, with your size, you're going to have to outperform. You're not just going to have to be better, but you're going to have to be so much better that they can't refuse. And so yeah, it has been hard. It has, there's been a lot of doubt along the way. Since he was 6, we've been told, oh, he's too small, he'll never make it. But he's dealt with the doubt, the rejections. I mean, there's been so many rejections along the way. It's crazy. We'd like to think that all those things have just prepared him to be ready at that next level. It's exciting. Now we're hoping, we're waiting for him to get some minutes. He's been out there for about a month now. Talking to him in the last week, he says he's starting to feel like he's adjusting, because clearly, there's a physical difference. There's, the level, it jumps. And that's the hardest part in our country, is that you go from high school, college to pro, and it's extremely big jump. People don't realize how big that jump is. So what do you do at 18 to 22 when you're physically still developing? It's a hard road for every player trying to do it.
Yeah, and it's not like we're at the point in America either where it's, a ton of 18 to 22-year-olds that are playing professional soccer. I think we're still at a point where we're looking at guys in their mid to late 20s, maybe more quote-unquote veterans of the game, who are in sort of some of those leagues. So, yeah, I mean, there definitely is a little bit of a learning curve there, but it's good to see that good to hear that his confidence is still up. You mentioned his training has been long and hard. And one of the things you mentioned in our, pre-interview conversations through text messages and things is you want to talk about how you want to sort of change that pathway and maybe make the pathway for the kids that are coming up through your program different than what Jakob had to go through with his development and his path to where he's at now. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, about some of those specifics that you're trying to make different and maybe make more accessible?
Yeah, I mean, just like there's so many parts in the game. In our current environment, for a player to succeed, they're probably doing more than going to just their team practice, right? Like, however often their team practices, doesn't matter. They're probably doing more than that. They're probably going to a technical skills training. They're probably going to a physical trainer. I mean, really, to make it to the next level, you have to be good on all the different pillars. So we're trying to combine a lot of those things. So obviously with I Got Skills, we've always been real big believers in being technically proficient, and having a lot of technical ability, which is always interesting, because then you see me in a game and I'm talking about playing simple, right? So because the idea for me is you should have the ability to do it. That doesn't mean you always have to, right? Like, if you talk about one-touch soccer, it doesn't mean you should always only touch the ball once. It's you should have the ability to play that ball in one touch, especially for a midfielder. So it's you got to have that, but then also you have to have physical. And to be honest, if I look back at Jakob's development, the only thing I would change, the biggest change I should say, is that we would have added another layer of physical development in it. But oftentimes what's happening is people are sacrificing their technical work to go do physical training because, I'm not fast enough. So instead of going and working on the ball, now they're spending 2 hours in the gym. And I'm sorry, for a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, it's not doing them a whole lot, right? Like, I'm not going to say there's no benefit. There is. There's absolutely benefit. But is the trade-off worth it? Is the work in the gym worth the time you're losing on the ball. So one of the things we've done is in our facility, we've just built out a gym. We've been fortunate through ways to do it at a reduced cost, but we were able to build out our gym. So all our players 11 and up, before they're hitting the turf, they're going into the gym, they're doing hit workout, getting stronger, getting faster, and then working on the turf, and which is also creating consistency. And we're trying to create it where they're getting all those different aspects in one place, and then also just kind of helping guide players too, because it's so muddy. Like what's the best direction to go in the U.S.? Like some people will say college. Maybe for some players that is the absolute best direction, and I coach at DCTC as well, and for some players it's an incredible option. Jakob went there for 1 year. Soccer wise, it was a fantastic experience. The level is surprisingly good, but it's not a traditional school, so there's a lot of families that will they'll shut it. Oh no. I mean, I don't understand that. Like there's different pathways, right? And so to say, oh, you have to go to school, or you shouldn't go to school, or nothing is absolutely correct, but it's trying to help guide players and what's going to be the best for them. Hopefully, there's more programs that are continuing to grow. I know Minneapolis City is focusing a lot on those gap years that we're talking about, those 18 to 22. Laura's doing a lot of work with some younger players as well, with multiple teams. It's good to see, and it's needed, and it's going to take not just me. It's not just this group, not just that group. It's going to take everybody creating these different pathways, and kind of doing our own thing, because again, the pathway for one player is totally different from another. So what might be right for one player to go here or there, it's not the same for the next. So it's just we're hoping that we make it easier for the next group of players, that they don't have to try to find everything, that we can just help guide them and provide for them what they need.
We've talked about sort of this last decade plus of evolution with the I Got Skills Academy, and even your continued evolution as a coach as well. What's next on the list? What's the future hold over the next 3 to 5 years for I Got Skills, and you specifically, if you have like a wish list of things you want to implement or include or add on, what sort of is at the top of that list?
Yeah, so this spring, in fact, the evolution has been crazy, because I truthfully never wanted to become a soccer club. I never wanted to be the director of coaching of a soccer club. It was not my intention. I love the idea of just doing a futsal club and focusing on that and working with the local clubs. That role is very hard. So we ended up starting our own club as well. So we have our training programs as well as our club. Down the road, we've got quite a few plans. Our facility right now, we're working on getting additional space, and with the also the goal in 3 years that we're going to be looking for a much bigger space of our own, that would provide even more. We're also looking to build outdoor facilities that are for public use. That's one of my big projects that I'm working on right now. Really hoping to work with the city of Burnsville. Specifically, I mean, this is the area that I grew up in, so I do have a focus specifically in this area, not to shut out any other areas. It's just south of the river where I'm from, so I want to, put a little effort in there. And Burnsville is so diverse as well. To me, it makes it a perfect spot to do something like this, because the sport does bring together people of different cultures. You see that every night at our facility with pickup. We've got people from all over the world playing the game together. And the biggest fight is who's playing next. It's so we want to introduce it into the public spaces and turn some more of these either tennis courts or some of the other things into open free play places to play.
That's awesome. Well, we'll definitely look forward to everything that you guys have coming down the pipeline at I Got Skills, and everything you're doing personally, Jason. A lot of great work being done, and we'll be happy to amplify that message wherever we can. Jason Popkin, founder of I Got Skills, countless accolades, licenses, and all done over a very short amount of time. As he mentioned, only got into the coaching game at 30 years old, so that's awesome. Jason, we appreciate the time as always. Thank you so much, and I'm sure we will talk again soon.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.